signals really quickly right away to let your brain know, oh, this is really warm, this is really cold. As long as it's not on that dangerous level where it's like burning your skin or freezing your skin.
Hi guys, this is part 2 of learning all the organs in the human body.
Again, they're going to be very adaptive. They're going to stop sending signals after a while. Or in other words, they'll become less responsive to that temperature. All right, so those are all the different types of sensory receptors in the skin. That was a lot, so let's do a quick recap of all of those. We've got the root hair plexus, which is going to detect like movement in the hair. That's a mechanoreceptor. We have the Pacinian corpuscle, and that's going to be detecting deep pressure, and it's going to be fast adapting. We've got the Meissner's corpuscle. Those are going to be more superficial. They're going to detect things like light touch, and they're going to be fast adapting, so they'll be really good for detecting movement. We have the Merkel discs. Those are going to be non-encapsulated, so they're not surrounded by anything. They're going to be for detecting light touch, but they'll be slow adapting, so they'll be really good at detecting things like shapes of objects. Yes. We have Ruffini endings, and those are going to be detecting stretch, and they're slow adapting. And all of those I just mentioned, the root hair plexus, Pacinian, Meissner's, Ruffini endings, Merkel discs, those are all mechanoreceptors. We have the Krauss end bulbs, which are going to be a thermoreceptor for detecting cold. And we have free nerve endings, which could be nociceptors for detecting pain, or they could be thermoreceptors. And you have cold receptors and warm receptors, and they have certain temperature ranges that they detect. Now, if you're trying to learn all of these sensory receptors for an upcoming test and that sort of thing, the only way to make sure that you know it really well and to really learn it is to practice it. So here's a blank diagram. Take a minute, pause the video, see if you can identify all of the receptors on here, as well as what each one detects. And here are the labels to the diagram again, so you can check and see how well you knew that. And if you're studying the integumentary system as a whole, check out my complete guide to the integumentary system. I take you through all the information you need to know, as well as ways to practice it and incorporate along with the nervous system. Your endocrine system is regulating processes. Almost every organ in your body is influenced in some way by hormones. All a hormone is a chemical messenger, a little molecule that travels throughout the bloodstream and tells different organs what to do.
اینا کلا همون کمیال بر تو یاد میده. اینا کلا هورمون میشه. هورمون چیه؟ هورمون یک مولکول اما که از بدن تو میره، اما که مثلا وقتی که میخوای یک کسی دوست داشته باشی او هورمونیه. خب
Endocrine glands, or organs that produce hormones in order to control and regulate and communicate with other parts of the body, from your brain to your torso, even in your sex organs. So we're going to go to the whiteboard and go through each of those organs and what they do. Then we'll enlist Terry's help to see where those organs are located three-dimensionally in the body. And finally, we'll recap everything at the end. So let's jump to the whiteboard and get started. So here we have an outline of the human body. And we're going to start in the brain. The pituitary gland is this tiny gland that hangs off the anterior side. Right. And it is a small gland, but a mighty gland. Basically, the pituitary is going to release a whole bunch of hormones that control all of the other glands of the endocrine system.
کل دیگرا کار میده. کل دیگرا اما که هورمون کار میده.
It's sort of the leader or controller gland of all of the others. It's going to release hormones to tell the thyroid what to do, to tell the adrenal glands what to do, to tell the ovaries or testes what to do. So first point, know that the pituitary controls all of the other glands. Now the pituitary itself, of course, is controlled by the hypothalamus in the brain. I don't have it labeled on the diagram, but it's right here.
Hypothalamus, pituitary کار میده. خب یعنی من چیه؟
Runs and produces some of its own hormones that regulate the pituitary gland. Now, in addition to controlling all the other glands, the pituitary has several other functions as well. I'm not going to get into all of those right now, but there's two I want to talk about before we move on. One is that it produces a hormone called growth hormone.
Growth hormone growth hormone چیه؟ اما که کانون میشی. وقتی که خواب میشی، بازاری بیدار میشی، اما که کانونی. اما pituitary اما که
stimulates your bones to grow and your muscles to grow stronger. Some of the tallest people to have ever lived had tumors in the pituitary gland. Those tumors cause an excess production of growth hormone, leading to longer bones and therefore greater stature and greater size. Another important hormone produced by the pituitary gland is oxytocin. It's also known as the love hormone.
Oxytocin چیه؟ اما که وقتی که ایت میخوای کسی تو بغل خوب کنی. وزری oxytocin.
Cuddle hormone. Now, oxytocin has several roles in the female reproductive system, but men and women both produce oxytocin, and it's been found that oxytocin is released during moments of intimacy, such as giving a friend a hug. Oxytocin. And that production of oxytocin leads to increased attachment and bonding with with other people. So not a comprehensive list, but 3 important functions of the pituitary gland, controlling the other endocrine glands, regulating your growth, and making the hormone oxytocin, which leads to increased bonding and attachment to other people. There's a second endocrine gland in the brain called the pineal gland. The pineal gland releases the hormone melatonin. Melatonin will make you sleepy. So the pineal gland is going to regulate your sleep cycle.
این ملاتونین وقتی که خوابش یه تیامینه این فایروده این تیامینه این فایروده نه این هورمون میبره این فایروده
The thyroid gland is all about regulating your metabolism. Metabolism is basically all of the chemical reactions in the body that convert the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe into a more readily usable form of energy.
این متابولیزم مینه متابولیزم چیه مثلا وقتی که نون میخوری بر شکم تو چی کار مینه هورمون میده وقتی که چی نفس میکشی بر ششات هورمون میده
That we all know and love as ATP. So the thyroid gland is regulating your metabolism or your energy use in the body. So thyroid metabolism. Up next, on the posterior side of the thyroid are the parathyroid glands. Now on the whiteboard here, it looks like the parathyroid glands are in front or anterior. Those 4 little circles or 4 parathyroid glands are actually posterior or behind the thyroid gland. And they have a completely different function. The parathyroid gland will regulate the calcium levels in the body. And when you think of calcium...
اینا چی؟ اینا 4 تا خط کلسیم تخونامات تیار مینا.
You probably think of the bones.
Yes,
the skeletal system is my favorite. But even more important than calcium in your bones is calcium being in your bloodstream. If we don't have the right amount of calcium in your bloodstream, that calcium can't make it to all the nerves throughout your body. And if your nerves stop working and your brain stops working, then you're in real trouble. So whenever the calcium in your blood is too low,
وقتی که کلسیم خیلی خیلی پایین تیخونا ما نمیتونه به مغز ما خون برسه اگه مغز ما خون نرسه میموری اینا 4 تا کلسیم خیلی بیشتر میده.
The thyroid gland will release a hormone that takes some of that calcium from your bones and put it back into your blood. Or if you have too much calcium in your blood, the parathyroid releases a different hormone which tells that calcium to go back into your bones and build your bones up stronger. So when you think of the parathyroid gland, think of the skeletal system and bones, but also think of calcium in your bloodstream. Inferior to the thyroid and parathyroid glands is the thymus gland. The thymus gland is located in the chest, just superior to the heart. And the main function of the thymus gland is to develop your immune system during...
Thymus جلو قلب منه جلو قلب منه
adolescence. Basically, when you're a kid, the thymus gland plays a huge role in developing your immune system and making it so that you can fight off pathogens more readily. But it turns out, as you get older, your thymus...
thymus چی چرکا جنگ مینه چرکا جنگ مینه ولی وقتی که کمونتر میشه دیگه thymus نمیخواه خورد میشه.
This gland starts to shrink. By the time someone's in adulthood, the thymus gland has shrunk to about 10% of its biggest size. And the older you get, the smaller that thymus gland will be and the less important it becomes. But if you never had a thymus gland at all, then your body would be more susceptible to different diseases and pathogens, and you get sick a lot. Inferior to that, in the abdomen, we have the pancreas. The pancreas releases a hormone called insulin. You may know somebody with diabetes who takes insulin. And if you do, they're taking insulin to help regulate their blood sugar levels. That's what
pancreas شیرینیات خونا ما تیامینه مو چیزا نبوده که مو تیشکم تو میزنه خشکم تو کمک کنن بغل شکم تو نه اینجا طرف چپه.
Pancreas is all about regulating the amount of sugar in your blood. And this is
if your
blood sugar gets way too low, then your brain will have the energy it needs to function. And if your blood sugar gets too high, it can start to damage your arteries and your veins. So the pancreas releases insulin.
وقتی که تخوناتو خیلی شیرینی نیه مغز تو انرژی نمیگیره باز بری درمون میشی میمیری این پنکریاس باز تخونا ما بیشتر شیرینی مینه خود که نماری.
As well as a hormone called glucagon to regulate the blood sugar in the body. Lateral to the pancreas and also posterior to the pancreas are the kidneys. And while the kidneys aren't considered an endocrine gland normally, just superior to them is the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands get their name for being next to the kidney. In Latin, adrenals next to, and renal is best friend. Adrenal gland. I also think they look like little kidney hats. When you think of adrenal gland, think of kidney hat. They just went to a party. It must be so much fun to be a kidney. I don't know, they got to process blood and urine. That actually doesn't sound that fun. The adrenal gland is going to release a lot of different substances and hormones, but two important ones are adrenaline and cortisol. Both of these hormones increase...
خا چی؟ نه هنوز اینجا خا بس خا adrenal gland adrenaline تامینه خا کورسولال خیلی دیگر هم چی مثل فقط دو تا میگه حالا
Your sympathetic response, or the things that need to happen whenever you're in danger. It'll increase heart rate, put more sugar in, but two important ones are adrenaline and cortisol. Both of these hormones increase your sympathetic response, or the things that need to happen whenever you're in danger. It'll increase heart rate, put more sugar in your bloodstream, make your mind more alert, all of those sorts of things to help you survive when you're in a stressful situation. These hormones also reduce the parasympathetic response. If somebody has a lot of painful inflammation, one treatment for that is getting a cortisone shot. Cortisone is essentially a cortisol injection. Cortisol diminishes the parasympathetic response and therefore reduces inflammation. But to summarize, when you think of the adrenal gland, think of the sympathetic response or the stress response of the body. Last, we have the two primary sex glands, the ovaries and the female reproductive system, and the testes in the male reproductive system. I'll cover their sexual functions more in depth in videos in the reproductive system. But for now, I want to talk about the hormones that they produce. We'll start with the ovaries. In this diagram, we have...
اینا تیزنای خبا تیمردان تیمردانیا
Here are the fallopian tubes.
تزینینیا
And
کمیشه
here are the ovaries.
خینا
Ovaries are going
اووریا
to regulate the menstrual cycle. Involving that using the hormones of estrogen and progesterone. Again, I'll cover that more in depth in videos on the reproductive system. Estrogen also increases secondary female sex characteristics. Think of all the outward changes that happens whenever a girl hits puberty. That's what we mean by secondary sexual characteristics. Now, the ovaries don't just produce estrogen and progesterone. They do produce testosterone as well, just in lower amounts. So whether someone has ovaries or they have testes, they're going to be producing both estrogen and testosterone.
خب اینا استروژن خب پروژسترون تامینه خب
just in different amounts depending on which organ they have. The ovaries also release eggs during the menstrual cycle. Next, in the male reproductive system are the testes. The testes have two main functions, and that are the production of sperm and the production of testosterone. Testosterone will help with sperm production.
تستوسترون
اگه داشته باشه میشه زنش. Think of all the outward things that happen to avoid during puberty. That's what we're talking about with secondary sexual characteristics. So those are the primary organs of the endocrine system. Now let's take a look at Terry the torso model and see where those organs are located three-dimensionally. Alright, so we'll start off with the brain. And in the brain we have the pituitary gland, which hangs off the front or anterior side of the brain. That's the controller gland that controls all of the other hormones. We also have the pineal gland in the posterior part of the diencephalon here, which is going to release melatonin and regulate our sleep cycle. Just superior to the pituitary gland is the hypothalamus, which controls the pituitary. Up here in the neck is the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland looks sort of like a bow tie around the trachea or the windpipe. And it regulates the body's metabolism. Also, if you ever see a thyroid gland bow tie, that should totally be a thing. I would totally wear it for all these videos. Please let me know if you find it. Now, the parathyroid glands are going to be posterior or behind.
حالا اونا چهار تا خطکه کنه بده کی پشت سری میشه
Regulate the calcium levels in your bloodstream. Now, Terry doesn't have a thymus gland.
یعنی فایمسی نگرشته تو اینجا ولی تا حالا اینجا میبوده کی
The heart and medial to the lungs.
اگه به هارجان نمیشه کلی
میشه فقط
Up next we have the pancreas, but we can't see the pancreas because it's posterior or behind the liver
آره سکو کل چی
and
میزا
stomach
نه سکو
intestines here. So let's take
آره سکو لور خچی نه لور خب اونی
So here's the
Any
pancreas. It's
pancreas.
connected to the small intestine as well as the spleen here. And the pancreas releases insulin and glucagon to regulate the sugar levels in your bloodstream. Anterior to the pancreas
انیا
پنکرس
are the
Any
kidneys, and just
kidney,
superior to each of those is the
adrenal gland
بجوز که
The adrenal
خودت
glands
ببینی.
release adrenaline and cortisol, which is going to regulate your body's
اینا
response
اینا
to
چی؟
stress.
آی
And then finally, we
کلا
have the ovaries and the testes. The female reproductive system here, the ovaries are located right
انیا او
here.
انیا
right
اینا
here.
اووریا
This is the uterus,
این
the
تزینین
fallopian
یک میشه
tube, and then the two ovaries.
But
The
the
ovaries
meat
are in
kind of
charge
very
of
baby
releasing
meat.
eggs, regulating the menstrual cycle, and producing estrogen, which develops all
Oh,
the
it's
secondary
common.
female sex characteristics.
نه
او
Finally, in the male reproductive system, we have the testes. The testes are going to produce sperm cells. They'll make testosterone, which will help develop the sperm cells, as well as develop all of the male secondary sex characteristics. Now, before we go, if you'd like, pause the video and see if you can name all of the endocrine organs, as well as...
تستیس سپرم اگه سپرم نداشته باشین این یک نمیتونی چیکار کنی
باز بچه هیچ وقت نداشت
خب حالا بگو این چیه اینجا
این مغزی
نه این
این تو خواهی
نه این pineal gland.
pineal
این چیه؟
یه خواهی
آها این اسمی چیه؟
نمیفهم
نه این پیتویتری این پینیالا این چیه؟ اینا 4 تا
اینا 4 تا
خب این کانون میگو این کانون چیه؟ فایروید اینا 4 تا اسمی نازی مرا این چیه؟
چیه کار جمعه
فایمس اینا 2 تا چیه؟
اکنی
بالکلینا چیه؟
خلق الله وکا نمینیه
ادرینال خب حالا این چیه؟
این چیه
زدکو پانکریاس خب حالا اینا 2 تا چی بوده کی؟ اینا 2 تا چیکار میکنه؟
اینا چی بچه تیار
خب اینا 2 تا چیکار میکنه؟
اینا مرد اینا مرد
خب میفهمم اینا سپرم تیار میکنه اما که بچه داشته باشی خب خلاص دیگه بس انا خلص مني كمان كده من نازفن
We have the pituitary gland, which controls all the other glands. It also makes oxytocin, the love hormone, and of course the hypothalamus controls that pituitary gland. We have the pineal gland, which makes melatonin and regulates your sleep cycle. We have the thyroid gland, which regulates your metabolism, and the parathyroid glands, which regulate the calcium level in the blood. We have the thymus gland, which develops your immune system during adolescence. There's the pancreas, which is going to release insulin and glucagon to regulate your blood sugar levels. And just superior to the kidneys are the adrenal glands, which produce adrenaline and cortisol to regulate your body's response to stress. Finally, we have the ovaries and the female reproductive system, which are going to release egg cells, regulate the menstrual cycle, and make estrogen, which is going to develop this female secondary sexual characteristics. And finally, in the male reproductive system are the testes, which will produce sperm cells, as well as testosterone, which will develop the male secondary sexual characteristics. All right, I guess we've reached the end, Okrin, of the video.
Okay, tell like and subscribe. Bye.